to the House. Mr. Speaker. Sorry, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for the opportunity to contribute to the debate on the Families Commission Amendment Bill. Obviously, we're discussing the commission that was established under a Labour government, and at that time I think it's fair for us to point out that Peter Dunn was a significant driver of the establishment of the Families Commission. And I do have to raise, he did indeed insist on it, says my colleague Andrew Little, but I do have to question, and I will be asking this question of the Minister and the Chair during committee stages, would she still have the Families Commission in place if it were not for Peter Dunn's ongoing role in propping up the national government? Because it really, what may be called streamlined by that side of the House is actually neutering. If we're honest, that actually what this bill does is really rip the guts out of the Families Commission and leave it, really loses its advocacy role. So let's get into a little more detail. I'll have Simon Bridges speak no more of neutering. I know how he feels about animal welfare, so we'll leave it at that. Labour does support this bill going to select committee, but our view is that this does not go far enough. In fact, it's Labour's view that the Families Commission should be disestablished altogether, and I will spend a little more time talking about that. But why doesn't it go far enough? Well, originally, the Families Commission was established to advocate for families in whatever form they existed. And I think we've seen clear evidence in recent times that the Families Commission has lost that role. Now, I wouldn't wish to guess as to the reason why they've done that. I could hazard a guess that political pressure has played a role, because if you look at one example, which we've seen the Families Commission push aside its advocacy role, there would be no better than paid parental leave. We had the Families Commissioner stand up and tell the New Zealand public that on one of the most soundly based policies in terms of evidence around the importance of child development and the role of the first 6 months in forming attachment with that family and the most developing a strong, stable footing for a child in those first 6 months. We instead had a Families Commissioner stand up and say he wasn't sure New Zealand could afford it. Well, I would say, Mr. Speaker, New Zealand cannot afford not to bring in a policy like that supported by Sue Moroney in her private member's bill. Now, to have the Families Commissioner stand up against the extension of paid parental leave, how is that acting as an advocate for families? It was absolutely nonsensical to me. What happened to evidence? What happened to advocating based on research and sound practice and evidence? Now, that for me was the point at which we really saw the Families Commission tip over the edge. Now, if we want to talk about streamlining, which the government member who just took her seat talked about, the ultimate form of streamlining would be to get rid of it entirely and beef up the Children's Commissioner in the Office of the Children's Commissioner. In fact, add some additional support around that from the central government perspective as well. Bring in a Minister for Children, create a Children's Ministry that the Office of the Children's Commissioner is acting as a direct advocate and putting pressure on the Children's Minister to act in the best interests of children. That would be the ultimate form of streamlining. And surely we can all accept that advocating on behalf of children, a strong Children's Commissioner and a strong role within central government would be in the best interest of families as well, so thereby default picking up the job that the Families Commission has long since abandoned. But this bill instead keeps the Family Commission. But it does, as I've said, weaken the role that they play, and Rajan Prasad would know that well, given that he was once in the Families Commission. He can see intimately the changes that are being made here, what a difference it will make to the way they operate. Moving to one commissioner, as I've said, would be pointless if they're not an advocate anyway. What's the point of one commissioner who doesn't advocate for families when you've got 7 who currently don't anyway? Then creating a centre for family and whānau. Again, if you can't guarantee the independence of this group, aren't we then just creating a new unit within a government department? Now, if the Minister cannot demonstrate to us that that's not going to happen, then again, I don't see the point of that. Surely then we should just ask MSD to pick up that role, and they are indeed funded to play that kind of role. We've heard much discussion and celebration from the other side of the House around the introduction of something called the Annual Family Status Report. Now, in and of its own right, that might sound interesting or useful, but I would ask government members to at least canvass the space in which they are now thrusting out this Annual Family Status Report. And what already exists? Well, we've got the social report. That used to happen every 3 years. It was a really every year. That was a really comprehensive, important report, became the foundation of a lot of work that MSD was doing for our families. But unfortunately, the social report is no longer happening every year. It's happening every 3 years. We could probably have saved ourselves a lot of money by just simply returning that report to an annual basis and perhaps diluted the need for the Annual Family Status Report. We also have the Children's Social Health Monitor. We have Brian Perry's excellent work on household income and inequality report, which generates, again, a lot of the policy development we see coming out of not just MSD but other agencies working in this field. We have the OECD Income Inequality Report. We have the critical but underutilised Growing Up in New Zealand research, which is probably going to be the most useful piece of research for the future development around children's policy and the policy for our families over the next 10, 20, 30 years. It is an extension of the kind of work we had done in Dunedin, the longitudinal study. And I see that the Growing Up in New Zealand work is going to be transferred to this unit, and I can guarantee to the government that this side of the House will be keeping a very watchful eye on the preservation of that critical piece of work. It's so important that we understand across a cross-section of our New Zealand families what it is to bring a new child into New Zealand and grow up in New Zealand. And that's why that report is so, so key. And we've had 2 reports thus far. I'd like to see MSD utilising it a lot more. And I hope to see it in the alternative white paper. If it's not, we'll be asking some big questions. But that's not the only report. Add to that the Salvation Army status report, the health report, the report coming out from the Health Select Committee on the first 1,000 days, the Green Paper, the White Paper, the Māori Affairs Select Committee work that Louisa Wall has been instrumental in instigating. All of these pieces of work exist, and my big question would be, how will the Annual Family Status Report add to that already comprehensive list of work that already exists? And secondly, if it is going to add to it, I'd be interested to see how it will bring something new to the table. If it is going to add something to it, will we actually do anything with it? Because as Rajan Prasad has pointed out, we've certainly had plenty of pieces of work, including on paid parental leave, coming out of the Families Commission, that has since been ignored, not just ignored, contradicted by the Families Commissioner. So it's one thing to produce a report, it's another thing to do something with it. On my final point, will this newly structured Families Commission have the independence it needs when it comes to the research and evaluation function it will have through the new $3.8 million Research and Evaluation Unit? Because the Commission's monitoring and evaluation section of the bill states, in order to perform its monitoring, evaluation and research function, the Commission has the following additional functions: to identify opportunities where evidence and research will assist in determining or achieving the government's priorities in the social sector. That is the wrong way around. The old bill used to state to encourage and facilitate the development and provision by ministers of the Crown, departments of state and other instruments of the executive of policies designed to promote or serve the interests of family. It used to be that the research didn't come with any bias. It was used to inform what government did. Now we're using the research and evaluation to prop up and support existing government policies and ideas. It is the wrong way around. In fact, much of this bill is the wrong way around. And it is our contention, Mr. Speaker, that the way forward is to scrap this commission altogether. That's what we'll be proposing when this bill goes to Select Committee. I look forward to the government members trying to justify this neutered commission's existence.
Denise Roche.